I don't know if this story is true or not, but the author insists that it is. Let me read it to you. There are 2 things that you should never do. The first is to go into the woods at night. The second is to listen to the whispers of the trees when you're alone in the dark. I made that mistake once, and I regret it to this day. It was about 10 years ago, and I was working for my father, who was a logger. We were contracted to clear some land near an old, abandoned mental hospital. Legend has it that some gruesome experiments were conducted there during World War II, but of course, being the skeptic that I am, I didn't believe any of those stories. We'd been working there for about 2 weeks, and the job was almost finished. All that was left was to burn the debris and haul it away the next morning. My dad told me to stay behind after the others had gone to watch over the fire so it didn't spread. So I sat down on a log and started to read a book, just enjoying the quiet night air. After a while, I heard what sounded like screams in the forest, but I just figured it was some wild animals. Then I started to hear voices. They sounded like they were coming from the trees themselves. At first, it was just hushed whispers, but then they started chanting in unison. Burn, burn, burn. I thought it was just some kids playing a prank. But then the chanting grew louder and the voices seemed to come from all around me. I tried to make out what they were saying, and that's when I saw them. The trees surrounding me were swaying in the wind, but it wasn't the wind that was making them move. I watched in horror as the branches contorted and twisted, reaching out towards me like skeletal fingers. And then they started to speak again. And this time I understood what they were saying. They were telling me to get away, to run into the woods. I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was something like, run, 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 into the trees. Don't be afraid. Come with us. We won't hurt you. Their voices were no longer whispers, but loud, raspy shouts. And the closer they got, the more their voices grew. I stood up and started to walk away, but I couldn't bring myself to run into the trees. As I turned to leave, I looked back at the fire. I knew I shouldn't have been scared, but I was. I started to run, stumbling over logs and roots, tripping over rocks and dirt. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached. I don't know how long I ran for, but eventually I stopped and turned around to see if whatever was in the woods was following me. I couldn't see anything in the darkness, but I could hear the branches crashing and the voices growing louder. "Get away!" they shouted. "Leave this place!" I ran again faster than I had before, desperate to escape whatever was in the woods. Then suddenly, right before me, the ground gave way, and I fell into a deep hole. I landed on something soft, and when I turned on my flashlight, I saw that I had fallen into a pile of leaves. Shaking and out of breath, I climbed out of the hole and ran as fast as I could until I reached the highway. I flagged down a passing car and told the driver to take me away from that place. When I got home, I tried to tell my wife what had happened, but the words wouldn't come out. All I could say was that I had seen something terrible in the woods and that I needed to get away from it. She didn't believe me, thinking that I had just had a bad dream. But she agreed that we should take a vacation, and we went to visit my parents. It's been 10 years since that night in the woods, and I still haven't been back. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear the voices of the trees whispering to me in the darkness. I don't know if what I experienced that night was real, or if it was just a bad dream. But one thing I do know is that I would never go back to that place again. Was this story true or not? I don't know, but the author insists that it is. He says that he will never go back to that place again. Let me ask you, would you ever go back to that place again? Or is this just a story to scare people? Let me know in the comments below. I'd say I don't want to scare you, but that would be defeating the purpose. This is an extremely scary story that happened to a viewer of mine. It's pretty messed up. So here we go. Hey guys, this is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. So when I was 19, I was working for a moving company as like a mover's helper. And one of the guys that worked there, let's call him Joe, had a really beat up old pickup truck. And one day he invited me to go check out this place in the middle of nowhere that he had moved someone from the day before. Apparently it was some kind of storage unit or something. But he said it's in the middle of nowhere. He goes, you can get some really good weed there for cheap. So I thought, hell yeah, let's go. So off we went. It was in the middle of nowhere. When we got there, there was just this one single building. It was like an old farmhouse, kind of like what you would expect to see in like a slasher movie. The windows were boarded up and everything. It was pretty creepy. But Joe said, yeah, I moved this guy the day before. He lives here now. And he started telling me about how weird this guy was. Apparently, when they were moving him in, he had a bunch of animal skulls. It was dressed like a skeleton. He had face paint on. He looked pretty messed up. But anyway, Joe said he moved all his stuff in, and then he disappeared. He didn't know where he went. He just vanished. And so Joe said, let's go check it out. So we walk up to the door. I'm filming on my phone right now. So we walk up to the door. There's like a big-ass spider web right in front of it. So I stopped and I was like, oh my God, that's a huge spider web. And Joe kicks it and it falls apart. And I was like, dude, I think we should just leave. But he was like, nah, it's fine. Let's go check it out. So he opens the door. We walk inside and it is pitch black. It's like you couldn't see anything. And then we start hearing like chains dragging metal moans, like stuff that you would hear in a slasher movie. And I started freaking out because I was like, oh my God, what is that? And then Joe turned around and he was pale as shit. He goes, oh my God, I forgot I was scared of this place. Let's get the fuck out of here. So we turn around and run outside and he takes off. So I'm sitting there on the porch like, what the hell, where did he go? And I'm looking around and I see a trail of blood leading into the woods. I'm like, holy shit, what is that? And then I start hearing screams in the woods. I don't know if it was Joe or whatever, but it was just like horrible, gut-wrenching screams. I got up and I ran as fast as I could to the truck. I got in the truck and I sped off. Looking back, I think that maybe it was some crazy hillbillies or something in that house. But to this day, I still wonder what the hell was in that house, and what the hell was that sound, and what was that blood? Was it real or not? I don't know. That's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. That was the craziest story. Thanks for watching. I was home alone one night when I heard a knock at the front door. I opened it, and there was no one there. I've never been so scared in my entire life. It all started when I was about 12 years old. My parents would always go to this stupid book club thing every Wednesday night. It was just the worst, because they'd leave me home alone and I'd have to order my own pizza and just watch TV and stuff. It was so boring. But anyways, one time they forgot to set the alarm system. It wasn't that big of a deal since our house was in like the middle of nowhere, but still, it's not a good idea. Anyways, I was just watching The Walking Dead and eating pizza when I heard a knock at the front door. First I thought it was my parents coming home early, but then I checked the clock and it was 9:37 p.m. They weren't coming home until 10:30 p.m. So I was like, who the hell was at my door? I was home alone and I was scared to go to the door, but I was also curious, like, what if it was my parents or what if it was someone I knew? So I decided to go to the door and check. As I got closer to the door, I could hear voices. There were two people out there talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Then I looked through the peephole and saw two silhouetted figures standing on my porch. One of them was tall and thin, and the other one was short and fat. I couldn't see their faces or anything else, because it was completely dark outside and there were no lights on my porch. I was really scared, so I decided to turn on the light. When I did, both of the figures flinched and put their hands up like they were trying to shield their eyes from the light. And for a second, just for a split second, I saw the tall guy's face. It was so pale, and it had these huge black eyes, like the pupils were huge. It was like looking into an abyss. Then he turned his head, and I saw the short guy's face. His face was red and had these little beady eyes. Both of them were snarling at me and showing their teeth. I screamed and ran to my room. I locked myself in there and started dialing 911. As I was doing that, I started to calm down a little bit, and I realized that maybe it was just some kids playing a trick, or maybe some animals or something. So I hung up the phone and went to the window to look out. But when I did, I saw the two guys standing outside my window. I don't remember what I did after that. I think I just stood there freaking out and watching them. Then the tall guy started knocking on my window. Knocked and knocked and knocked, but I didn't do anything. I was too scared. I don't know how long we just stood there staring at each other. But eventually they stopped knocking and they stopped snarling, and the tall guy put his hand up like he was telling the other guy something. They talked in those weird voices again, and then they walked away. I didn't call the police or anything. I was just too scared. I stayed in my room for the rest of the night, and I didn't sleep at all. I don't know if it's because of that or not, but ever since that night, I've always had really bad dreams about those two guys. They show up in my dreams sometimes and try to break into my house and stuff, and I always wake up screaming. I don't know if this actually happened or not. I feel like it did, but sometimes I wonder if I imagined it. If it was real, then where are those guys now? Are they still out there? Are they looking for me? Or maybe it was all in my head. Is it just some figment of my imagination? Am I going crazy? I don't know. If you want to hear another story, I have a whole playlist of creepypasta stories. They're all scary. You can check them out right here.